Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent, what it means for the world and for the future. Thank you for indulging in some political discussion, lots of discussion on the last video, and thank you guys. I wish I actually had some more time to go back and forth with you on the comments, because I do enjoy that. Just a man of very limited means in the time area, but we try to cover a lot of topics on this channel, or I try to, I think there's a large umbrella of things to discuss around climate change. There's the human condition, humanity, what have we been doing? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Do we have a chance to save ourselves? Are we worth saving? How to deal with this on an emotional level. There's lots of things, lots of avenues to go down when discussing climate change. It's a big subject, probably the biggest. I brought up the news yesterday, or in the last video, maybe not yesterday, just because it's a pretty big news item. I think behooves people to talk about it. If you don't agree, that's fine. If you do agree with my views, that's great. We don't all have to be the same people. We're all on a quest, hopefully, to get better, to educate ourselves, to look for betterment in ourselves and in the world, wherever we can. That's my goal in life. Lots of things to look at, as usual. I'm going to try and bring you the many things in the limited time. Someone was asking me about how to donate without using PayPal. And I just was in the middle of work and a bunch of stuff, and so I couldn't actually get back to you, but I will, I'll start linking an address when in the description box. If you would like to mail a donation, you can do that. I have a PO box. It is for me, and so I'll link it below, and you can find that. So if you're interested in making a paper donation, as in a check, don't send cash, I'll let you know how to do that. Okie dokie. This is from Como News. Oh, I'll just give you the address real quick anyways. P.O. Box 132, South Pasadena, California, 91031. That's the zip code. Have it up here. 91031. And I will link it below. Over 300,000 lose power as storm with 60-mile-per-hour wind blows into region. This is from Washington. Significant windstorm blasted western Washington with 50 to 70-mile-per-hour winds and knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of customers Thursday, the latest in a string of powerful storms to have hit the region this month. Pictures there. So this wasn't yesterday, the day before. Pretty powerful storm. As the storm peaked into the mid-afternoon, over 300,000 people were in the dark as trees and power lines were toppled, but the number has dropped a bit as the winds have calmed a little into the afternoon. So they've been having some high wind. I believe last week there was another crazy high wind incident in Washington that caused some damage. I'm going to link this below, and you all can check that out. I'm getting a ton of articles from Nick Humphrey. If you all don't follow Nick Humphrey on Facebook, he has a Facebook page, Nick Humphrey Meteorologist. He is really good at just churning out articles to check out If you're not following him, follow him. It's pretty easy to type that in and find him. But I'm also getting a ton of articles from other places as well. I wanted to read this. This is from Truth Out. Research shows affluent Americans barely recognize U.S. income gap. So I was kind of talking about this in the last video or two. If you have money, it's really hard to understand how people live when they don't have money and the kind of things that they suffer through on a daily basis. A new report from the Federal Reserve highlights the bleak economic prospects for young Americans, concluding that millennials are in much worse financial shape than earlier generations at the same age. In terms of their relative income and wealth, these findings are not encouraging for those concerned with the problem of growing inequality. Despite the rise of populist anger in President Trump's USA, inequality received little attention in 2018 from both major parties. That is very, very true. And I really don't hear much from him in the way of, we got to help out those in need. Inequality, but make no mistake, the story of early 21st century U.S. is one of record inequality and a growing divide between two groups, the haves and the have-nots. 40% of Americans hold negative financial wealth, averaging $8,900 in assets in the wealthiest country in the world, while another 20% hold just 2% of wealth. Wow. This means that 60% of the nation holds virtually no financial assets or holds negative assets in the wealthiest country in human history. There was an article, and I don't think I actually ever got to read it on this channel, but I was reading through it and I wanted to read it, and it just got buried somewhere. Maybe if I can find it, I'll dig it up and read some of it. But it was just talking about income inequality and the disparity between African American income and all other people's income is pretty insane. Is like in Boston, the median income for white families is whatever it is, $150,000 or something like that. And it was like the median income for Black families in Boston was $8, like $8. No other zeros, no other numbers after that. 8, which is just insane. Not 800, not 8,000, 8. So poverty, inequality, unequal access to the economy is, hurting a lot of people. This is outside of the discussion of the fact that the economy needs to be completely torn down and rebuilt in order to take account for climate change. While nearly 60% of Americans agreed in late 2017 that there were strong or very strong conflicts between the rich and the poor, many have long been underinformed about how deep the divide between rich and poor runs. Nowhere is this clearer than in the sentiment shared by 54% of Americans that the U.S. is not divided between haves and have-nots. To better understand the importance of affluence and how we think about inequality, I designed a survey to ask Americans about the extent to which competing factors influence their opinions of the economic divide. The poll from late November 2018 was conducted by Qualtrics and includes a national representative random sample of 1,132 Americans. My poll sought to address two defining trends over time. One, on the one hand, millions are struggling harder and harder to afford important services such as healthcare and higher education, which ranks as serious concerns for most Americans, and the most Americans want the government to become more active in addressing. On the other hand, is the conservative view that Americans live better today than in the past due to mass access to affordable consumer goods such as televisions, phones, and video games. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I just kind of wanted to touch on it. It's not very long. I'm going to link this below and move on to an article from The Guardian from Thursday, December 20th. Risks of domino effect of tipping points greater than thought, study says. Oh, well, wait a minute. You mean it's faster than expected? It's greater than thought? It's worse than we thought? Worse than predicted. Scientists warn policymakers not to ignore links and stress that every action counts. policymakers have severely underestimated the risks of ecological tipping points. According to a study that shows 45% of all potential environmental collapses are interrelated and could amplify one another. The authors said their paper, published in the journal Science, highlights how overstressed and overlapping natural systems are combining to throw up a growing number of unwelcome surprises. The risks are greater than assumed because the interactions are more dynamic, said Juan Roca of the Stockholm Resilience Center. The important message is to recognize the wickedness of the problem that humanity faces. The study collated existing research on ecosystem transitions that can irreversibly tip to another state, such as coral reefs bleaching and being overrun by algae, forests becoming savannas, and ice sheets melting into oceans. It then cross-referenced the 30 types of shifts to examine the impacts they might have on one another and human society. Only 19% were entirely isolated. Another 36% shared a common cause, but were not likely to interact. The remaining 45% had the potential to create either a one-way domino effect or mutually reinforcing feedbacks. Ooh, that's not good. Among the latter pairings were Arctic ice sheets and boreal forests. When the former melt, there is less ice to reflect the sun's heat, so the temperature of the planet rises. This increases the risks of forest fires, which discharge carbon into the air, and that adds to the greenhouse effect, which melts more ice. Although geographically distant, each amplifies the other. By contrast, a one-way domino type impact is that between coral reefs and mangrove forests, when the former are destroyed, it weakens coastal defenses and exposes mangroves to storms and ocean surges. The deforestation of the Amazon is responsible for multiple cascading effects, weakening rain systems, forests becoming savanna, and reduced water supplies for cities like Sao Paulo and crops in the foothills of the Andes. This, in turn, increases the pressure for more land clearance. Until recently, the study of tipping points was controversial, but it is increasingly accepted as an explanation for climate changes that are happening with more speed and ferocity than earlier computer models predicted. The loss of coral reefs and Arctic sea ice may already be past the point of no return. There are signs the Antarctic is heading the same way faster than thought. Co-author Gary Peterson said the tipping point of the West Antarctic ice shelf was not on the radar of many scientists 10 years ago, but now there was overwhelming evidence of the risks, including losses of chunks of ice the size of New York, and some studies now suggesting the tipping point might have already been passed by the southern ice sheet, which may now be releasing carbon into the atmosphere. We're surprised at the rate of change in the Earth system. So much is happening at the same time and at a faster speed than we would have thought 20 years ago. That's a real concern, said Peterson. We're heading ever faster towards the edge of a cliff. The fourth most downloaded academic research of 2018 was the Hot House Earth paper, which considered how tipping points could combine to push the global climate into an uninhabitable state. That's all I'm going to read of that. I'm going to link it below. I almost read it. Almost read the whole thing. And I think I'm going to finish off with a bit, maybe not the whole thing, of an interview with Darja Mail. Was this in a Polish, on a Polish website? And I'm just going to destroy any words or Polish names or words. It's just titled, "We Are Off the Cliff," from December 15th, a conversation with Darja Mail. Zielone Wiedmoski, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. What circumstances, that is the interviewer, Zielone Wiedmoski. What circumstances prompted you to become an independent investigative reporter? Dar answers, I was completely flabbergasted by the US corporate media's selling of the invasion of Iraq to the general public. Given that I became politicized rather late in life, I was around 32 when I woke up from my privilege, that outrage was acute. I'd long since been a writer and decided one thing I could do was go to Iraq myself and start writing about how the invasion and occupation was affecting the Iraqi people. So I bought a laptop, a camera, and a plane ticket, figured out how to get into the country, and went. That was November 2003. Unpaid blogging turned into doing some freelancing, which turned into a full-time job. Not even going to go down the road of Iraq. Surely your stay in war-torn Iraq was a traumatic and transformative experience. Dar says, I ended up spending more than a year of my life in Iraq, over 8 trips spanning 10 years. Most of the time was spent during the first years of the U.S. occupation of that country. My time in Iraq changed me both as a human and a citizen of the empire. As a human, I really saw the lengths power is willing to go to maintain itself. The U.S. empire is without a doubt the most brutal and ruthless empire in the history of the world. Absolutely, I got to live on the front lines of that for a year. I watched it chew up women, children, the aged, the sick, as well as men from Iraq who chose to take a stand and fight back. The imperial juggernaut crushed them all and continues to operate within this war-torn country that has been stretched and pulled and bombed and starved and disintegrated for decades now by Washington, indirectly and directly. As a citizen of the occupying country, needless to say, I felt shame for all of our failure to stop the invasion, along with the ongoing abject refusal of the citizenry of the U.S. to take full responsibility for what their government is doing to the rest of the planet. I should add that I was consistently humbled by the dignity of the Iraqi people, who always were quick to make the distinction between the American people and the government and be more forgiving to the former. Anybody who thinks that was a good idea or that we needed to do that. Anyways. And also to refresh your memory, all of the war chants were going on all the channels, liberal and Fox News alike. So lots of liberal support for that destruction. But what is the main ambition of the U.S. national security apparatus, the largest and most expensive military complex in the history of the civilization? It is evident that it doesn't defend freedom and democracy. Washington actively supports 73% of the world's dictatorships. Right, empire is the goal, and the imperial expansion, plain and simple. All one needs to do is read the government's own unclassified documents. Global economic hegemony by way of using the hammer, that is the U.S. military. It is readily available for anyone interested in reading the annual U.S. Pentagon's Quadrennial Defense Review Report. All right, I'm going to move down to some climate when he talks about some climate change. But I'm going to link this below, and you can read the whole thing and get some education. Why did you shift your focus from wars and militarism to the environment and climate? Human-caused climate change and the 6th mass extinction are the biggest stories for all humans. Ding. And for every species on the planet. Ding. We stand on the brink of our own possible extinction. Ding. We've already emitted deadly amounts of greenhouse gases. The last time there was this much CO2 in the atmosphere, it warmed the Earth 7 degrees Celsius higher than today's temperatures, and the seas were 23 meters higher. We are now in a time where the damage has been done. We are simply waiting for the Earth to fully express all of that damage. How and if humans survive is a question. Along with a myriad of other species on the planet, what could possibly be a more important story than this? The mainstream, the interviewer says, the mainstream media doesn't seem to share your conclusion. They painstakingly construct a narrative which avoids shedding any light on the real dimensions and causes of wars, terrorism, and ecocide. No single Western broadcaster connects the dots or even attempts to present a broader view of the planetary drama. What are the reasons for the strategy which constitutes an unmistakable betrayal of public trust? Dar says, follow the money. There is no income to be made in reporting the unraveling of the biosphere. All of the mainstream media in the US, and most of it abroad, is beholden to its corporate sponsors, whose businesses are contingent upon the maintenance of business as usual and perpetual growth. And this is why it's very difficult to report on climate change factually and correctly, because it's a ratings killer. B, it's a zest for capitalism killer. When you start talking about actual solutions to climate change, or what climate change is actually about to do to us, it really it's a real bummer. It really bums people out. It really makes people feel like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing all this stuff that we're doing, the buying and the selling and the making and the doing and the shipping and the flying and the driving. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But that, all of that stuff is what is keeping everybody comfortable for the moment. We only have a little bit of time of that comfortableness left, whether it's 1 year or 3 years or 10 years. That time is finite. Best to figure out what we are going to do with this news and this knowledge. Mainstream media in the US and most of it abroad is beholden to its corporate sponsors whose businesses are contingent upon the maintenance of business as usual and perpetual growth. They are more concerned with ratings. The imperative is to bring enough consumers to watch their adverts. Bringing a news story, a big news story that's going to have dramatic economic implications as well as life implications is not good for their business model. Additionally, they have conditioned their readers and viewers to seek more entertainment instead of news or infotainment. Hence, they have conditioned themselves as news networks to pursue more entertainment stories, the so-called infotainment, sports, celebrities, oddities, etc., in order to give the audience what it wants. So it's a vicious circle. No one wants to waste time talking about the planetary emergency, e.g. the Earth quickly losing its conditioner, the Arctic sea ice. Most people don't want to hear about it. There's another factor, groupthink. Practically all the media outlets are to a certain extent affected by it. As a reporter, I experienced the phenomenon firsthand. Following the editors on the news floor, we would be oftentimes waiting to report on the breaking story until another major media outlet took the lead. We were afraid to run it because we didn't want to be wrong. The story could have ended up being overly sensational, etc. It's not really journalism anymore, certainly not in the case of the major broadcasters. Interviewer, in your monthly climate dispatches, you've substituted the term climate change with the acronym ACD. Could you explain the rationale behind this? Dar says it stands for anthropogenic climate disruption. I chose to do this in order to be scientifically accurate. And because since most of my audience is in the US, where the fossil fuel industry continues to foment the climate change denial movement, climate always changes. This is a fact. So calling it ACD means it is human caused and that the climate is disrupted, which is more accurate, giving some places actually cool, most warm, which is more accurate, given some places actually cool, most warm, but everywhere it is, without a doubt, disrupted. I think that's all I'm going to read of this article. I'm going to link it below. It's long. There's lots of good stuff in here. Oh, let's read something about Fukushima. Interviewer, the chief of the stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has admitted that the technology needed to retrieve and secure melted down cores doesn't exist, and it may take 200 years to develop it. Oh, the operator of the plant, and Dar says the operator of the plant and the state agencies do not have a solution to this crisis. Fukushima is the massive story with global health implications, and it's been completely swept under the rug, even more so than the climate predicament. And it's far surpassing Chernobyl in terms of the amount of radiation that has been released and is being released. Meanwhile, the Japanese government is busy planning for the Tokyo Olympics. I would call it criminal negligence. The officials that are there to protect the mighty economy. They can't really sound the alarm on this because then Japan might not get the Summer Olympics. The citizens would have to be relocated and it would tip off the rest of the world to its massive festering crisis. Supplant Fukushima with ACD and you'll understand why it's not discussed every day on the front pages of the world's most prestigious newspapers. But it is discussed right here on Black Bear News. That's all I'm going to read of this article. I have run out of time. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Yeah, I think that the term climate change, I'm really sick of it, and I don't like it. And it actually leads. It's too like climate change. The climate's always changing. It's it's like there's absolutely zero teeth in climate change. It's gumming. It's just gumming its way into irrelevance. I personally like global warming because that's what's happening. The Earth is getting hotter, everything's melting. We're going to get hot. Plants are going to die. That's what's happening. Global warming. Um, so any other term you might want to use for it: abrupt climate change, anthropogenic climate disruption, blah blah blah. But climate change. Yeah, there's too many holes. It's a hole big enough to drive a truck through for the deniers, because climate change, and for people that are, just regular random people on the street, are like, climate change, like, who cares? Like, what are we going to do for dinner? There's a new movie out, climate change. Okay. Like, it's just not, it just doesn't sound important on any level. Anyways, yes, thank you so much for your time. If you would like to support this channel on the interwebs, you can do so at the links below, and also at the address below. Until next time, peace.